Mr. Shapiro, I was struck by another example of what you described earlier accurately as projection in Mr. Swalwell's comments. The Democrats today are expressing solicitude for and chastise the majority for chilling the sacred expressive rights of multinational conglomerates based in foreign capitals, but interrogate you about the intricacies of your religious beliefs on sexual morality. I apologize on his behalf. You know, if it were genuine, I would sympathize with the objective of keeping famous brands out of controversy, that they stick to sports and entertainment. But the World Federation of Advertisers and their GARM that they've created, their members, they and their members continue to seek to involve themselves in highly controversial issues. Your colleague Michael Knowles in an article last year pointed out that InBev is a member of WFA. And the pretext for what we're talking about today is they want to keep their brands out of trouble, but they rolled out the Dylan Mulvaney campaign and destroyed the famous Bud Light brand. But they would tell us that the purpose of this organization, all these global conglomerates are members of, is to keep their brands out of trouble. Disney's a member of the WFA, according to Mr. Knowles' article. The report that the committee has issued discloses intense activity by GARM around Musk's purchase of Twitter. They didn't like that. Mr. Rakowitz, in a February 2023 email, joked to his colleagues about, quote, being the idiot who challenged Musk on brand safety issues. Since then, Twitter is 80% below revenue forecasts. And I think that email can be taken a couple of ways, but it sort of appears that he's actually patting himself on the back. He was called an idiot, but he's saying, I'm the genius that took Twitter down 80% of its revenues. But there's also, one of the things that they didn't like about Twitter was that they say Mr. Rakowitz also wrote that he had connected with members of GARM's steer team, these guys, about Mr. Musk's leadership of Twitter, and Unilever has, quote, issues with overly partisan takes, e.g. Hunter Biden laptop exposure. I think Mr. Tiffany was onto something earlier when he begged the question about interference in American elections. And the question I think I'd like to pose, I've heard a lot from my colleagues in the time I've been here about foreign malign influence. The Hunter Biden laptop suppression very arguably had a significant impact on the outcome of the 2020 election. So is this foreign malign influence? And what determines whether foreign influence from London, for example, is malign?
Again, I think that one of the big problems here that we have is vague, unspecified, subjective standards that are posing as pseudo-objective standards. And under that guise, all bias falls in one direction. When all the bias keeps falling in one direction, you start to suspect that actually the standard is not objective. And once again, the standards that are being used by GARM are, as stated by the titular head of GARM, not aligned with the First Amendment. This is a person who is overtly criticized, according to the report, the First Amendment itself, talked about how those standards should not apply. So why wouldn't he apply his own standards or the standards of a political side of the aisle to advertising dollars if they could? I mean, the use, again, of advertising dollars as a cudgel in order to shut down one political side of the aisle, the effects of that are quite clear, certainly on a wide variety of businesses on the right.
So is it then, whether or not antitrust law as it currently exists extends to that, if foreign government or foreign-based political actors with global reach are using their economic power to limit the expressive rights of Americans, or certainly to intrude on and affect our electoral processes by favoring one political side or the other, to the point of jumping and saying we don't like the Hunter Biden laptop being exposed, Is that not a legitimate object for Congress certainly to look at? And then should Congress consider the extent of its regulatory power to protect Americans' expressive rights?
I mean, it's certainly quite dangerous when you have the EU working with GARM to set standards for what companies can and cannot advertise or should not advertise, while simultaneously attempting to regulate the social media companies that are largely the recipients of those ad dollars.
What accounts for the solicitude of my colleagues, the Democrats, for the international conglomerates' expressive rights and their disregard for the expressive rights of ordinary Americans?
Yeah, I mean, the hypocrisy is rather glaring. As I said earlier, the shocking adherence to free market capitalism and freedom of consumer choice on the left side of the aisle today is something to behold. They've invoked it almost as commonly as they've invoked Project 2025 today, which, frankly, I'm getting a little creeped out by. I think if they say it 3 times, then President Trump appears and challenges them to a golf match or something. It's like Beetlejuice.
It would be funny if it weren't so strange. Thank you.